Thank you.
Les, I hope you're doing well today. I know I've started this off roughly here. Have you been waiting just a little bit?
That's a good way of putting it, roughly.
I apologize for the wait. Today, I'd like to talk about, take a little bit of a dive into some of your former HWA talent. And one name that's not talked about a lot, but I'd like to talk about him is Russ Haas, the brother of Charlie Haas, and talk a little bit about his story. How was he signed? Was he with you first? What can you tell us about Russ Haas?
Russ and Charlie, good athletes, good college wrestlers, good background in school and everything. I, I got no complaints about either one of these guys, but you knew they were brothers by looking at them, but they were kind of different as day and night. Charlie was so intense and like kind of wired and serious as a toothache. And Russ, he'd rib with you, cut up. It's like the hell with it type of guy, right? But
Hmm.
yeah, they both worked hard. Let me tell you, if you're going to ask about December the 15th, 2001, I know where you're going
Hmm.
because I remember that date every year now. I do. But here's the crazy thing. Charlie had some health problems. I'm Charlie. Russ had some health problems. And
Hmm.
JR had, we had talked, JR and I had talked on the phone. Jim Ross, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, who was head of talent relation at that time. And they thought it was best, to err on the side of holding Russ out too long,
Hmm.
instead of sending him out there quick because, like one doctor had cleared him and said, I think he can go back. But Jim said, let's hold him out a while. Now, to tell you about his sense of humor, Russ would come in and watch training, right?
Hmm.
And so once we were done and guys were, just hanging out and talking or someone going to the weight room or whatever, and I'd head back toward the offices, he'd say, hey, coach. And I'd turn around, he'd be up in the ring. I said, get your ass out of that ring. He'd just laugh. I said, don't you dare take a bump or I'll kill you, right?
Hmm.
But that was his sense of humor, right? Now, I hope I remember this exactly the way it went because I'm going to talk to you about the 14th of December, the night before,
Hmm.
leading up to the morning that we found out that Russ had passed. Okay, we were doing a show in Springfield, Ohio, about 70 miles from Cincinnati, and of course, Russ wasn't part of the shows. There was no reason for him to go, and so anyway, now the story comes from Russ's wife or widow, is that at some point in that evening they had company. They had another couple over to the house, and Russ said, "I want to go to Springfield." And his wife said, Russ is 70. By the time we get there, the show will be over. He said, I don't care. I want to go to Springfield. I want to, go see the boys. And I think most of the guys, like myself, were surprised when he came walking in the door, right? Because the show was virtually almost over. And I said, what are you doing here? I just want to see you guys come to hang out. And I never thought any more about it. So as we're leaving, I was telling everybody good night. I said, I'll see you guys all tomorrow because the morning of the day of the 15th was Saturday. And that was our Christmas party. Every year we had a Christmas party at the gym. So left the show in Springfield that night, went home, got up, went into the gym the next morning. And a couple of the guys were there already. And here comes Steve Bradley and Lance Cade. I think we're in Steve's car, pulling up out front and didn't even bother to park at a parking spot, just stopped in the middle of the driveway and got out. And I said to a couple of guys that were in the office with me, these guys make a hurry to party. They're not even going to park the car, right? Made a joke
Hmm.
out of it. And so when they came through the door, I said, could you guys, I know you guys are anxious to grab a beer and some chow and party, but could you go park the car? You don't know, you haven't heard. I said, what are you talking about? Russ passed away last night. What? Had no earthly idea. Now, he had gotten back to the house or to the apartment, and they were watching a movie. And his wife said, "I'm going to go on to bed." He said, "I'm going to watch the end of the movie." And to the best, again, this is, I don't have every detail, but the next morning she woke up and I guess heard the TV on, but didn't see Russ, and walked out in the living room, and he was gone. It, passed on at some point in the evening. And so, of course, when Steve and Lance told me, so okay, everybody was congregating over at the parking lot at the apartments. That was on the 15th of December of 2001. And man, that was crazy. I mean, it was. JR and I spoke on the phone, and he said, "Call me if anything you need. Keep me abreast of what's going on from your end, and I'll keep you abreast from this end." And that's how it happened. Now, nobody, everybody was there and knows the story that I just told you, probably, and those listening to us now. Did Russ sense something that, in the middle of visiting with another couple, let's go to Springfield, I want to see the boys? But that's the mystique of that particular night.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I put a poster up in the lobby at the gym, honorary head trainer, Russ Haas, and with his, date born and the date of passing. Nice guy, great guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say, he was the yin of him and Charlie were yin and yang. Charlie was as serious as a toothache, and Russ could give a damn, right? Just completely different in that respect. Oh, don't get me wrong, Charlie had a sense of humor as well, but it was Russ was like, "Hey man, cool, everything's cool." But yeah, hell of an athlete, hell of a guy, But yes, it never fails for me. December the 15th, Russ crosses my mind. And well, Charlie and I are friends on Facebook. And of course, one of his boys is named after Russ,
Mm-hmm.
And I know they're competing as amateur wrestlers. And I forget what one of the tournaments several months ago. And Charlie was, making comments on what they had done. And Russ, the son that's named after his brother, had, I think, won his division or his weight class or whatever. And I said, I bet Russ is looking down, and smiling. But yeah, I'll tell you, it was a tough thing to deal with. It truly was. Charlie, of course, we used it in the storyline. We had to, and, but gave Charlie, a push out of that. And, which probably someone listening to this say, "Damn, that's cold." No, it's not. It's business.
Mm-hmm.
You take what you get your hands on to make storylines work for you. But yeah, Charlie was good people. Russ is good people. And it's like I say, Charlie and I are friends on Facebook, so I'm watching young Russ and those kids, following Dad and Uncle Russ's, path through wrestling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
When they got assigned to developmental, were they first assigned to HWA, or did they go somewhere else first?
No, I think they were in Memphis for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they came in with a package. And so yeah, but like I say, solid amateur background. Well, and then of course Charlie and Sheldon Benjamin,
Mm-hmm.
got the push for a while, and
Oh yeah.
that was a hell of a deal as well. But yeah, it was tough. We were sitting. All the boys had their cars parked out in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
The weather was good. I mean, it was December the 15th in Cincinnati, but still, it was warm enough that we were standing out around the cars, and just we were all in shock. I mean, we just seen him the night before,
Mm-hmm.
right? Said we'll see you tomorrow at the party, and he's gone. So what I will say is, and I know JR must feel the same way, although we never discussed it, is the fact that, decided to hold him out and not put him back in the ring to
Mm-hmm.
train, at that point in time. But yeah, that was if there was a low spot in my life as a trainer, that was the one. Was Russ was good people. He really was. And like I say, they worked hard. They busted their hump, you know, and never could have complained about either one of them. But yeah, it does remind, and like I say, December 15th never slips by that I don't think of Russ and what happened
Mm-hmm.
and the wild idea that he came to Springfield almost to say goodbye to everybody before he passed. You know.
Now, was he training on the regular before they found out there was something wrong with him, or how did they discover that they needed him to sit
Well,
out for
I
a
forget.
while?
I think. I, excuse me. My sinuses are draining. Anyway, yeah, he had been to the doctor for something unrelated, and they
Mm-hmm.
came up with, that he had a problem, that they thought, and of course, then they contacted the office in Stanford, and JR called and said, hold him out,
Mm-hmm.
until we get him cleared. And like now, the doctors had cleared him to go back in terms of physical exercise and whatever. And like I say, that Jim and I had a conversation on the phone, and the idea was, well, let's err against holding him out too long, opposed to sticking him back in there before we should. And with what happened, I can't say that I'm sorry that we did that because
Mm-hmm.
sure in hell they'd laid it right back on him. Well, you threw him in the ring too soon, right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
But but yeah, good guy, and it was tough on Charlie to keep going too at that point. I know it was, but he worked his Charlie kept working his
Mm-hmm.
ass off, and you know we all got through it. But
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody was in the crew at that point
Mm-hmm.
remembers December the 15th.
Were they doing dark matches together, or were they always the Haas brothers? Was it a package deal with them throughout their stint there?
Well, when they were with me, well, of course, they and the Island Boys, fought,
Mm-hmm.
Umaga and Rosie. It was a built, it was a storyline waiting to be done. And so, but yeah, for the most time, Charlie and Russ worked as a team. Like I think I said to you early on, I had so many wrestlers, and I'm not a three-way dance guy. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen enough of those. I don't need to see another one. I can draw you how they go. We'll throw one guy out. He'll oversell while we do our spots. He'll come, and, the whole
Mm-hmm.
story. But I had all this talent, all this good talent. And so we had four-way tags, we had three-way, four ways, and so forth, so on. So to be sure that everybody got their ring time, besides the
Mm-hmm.
training during the day through the week. So yeah, uh, but yeah, that was a tough time for all of us. And of course, some I had to go back to the gym because some of the guys, were still back, and we finished the party, but it was not a
Mm-hmm.
joyous occasion. I mean, we ate the food that was there and this and that. And then I went home and just sat and stared at the wall for a while. I mean, because the first time I'd lost an athlete, you
Yeah.
know, on a crew. But yeah, it's December the 15th. It's in my head every year now. And yeah, Russ is good people. And like I say, Charlie and I are friends on Facebook, and he's pushing his nephews, his own kids, and that's a good thing too.
Was it hard to not only work through that, but also have to be there for Charlie? And then how long was Charlie out before he decided that he needed to get back into the ring and continue on?
I don't remember. He stayed out a couple of weeks, I believe, and
Hmm.
and in a situation like that, you got to leave it up to the athlete himself,
Hmm.
or her, he or her, or woman or man, because you know what's inside of you better than I'll ever know. So
Hmm.
that was the way that went. And like I say, we did go ahead, because it was going to be high profile in the news anyway that we'd lost a wrestler. and that his brother was still active in the company. So we used it as part of the storyline and build off of it. But yeah, it was tough on everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
it was, you know, to joke. I'd see a couple of guys like try to joke it with Charlie, and then I guess you'd see their face register like, oh no, it's
Hmm.
you know, it's Charlie's got other things on his mind right now. But Charlie held up. I mean, well, you know, and I'm sure it was a burden to him, you know, but he busted his ass, showed up at training, worked hard in the shows and everything, and got through it. So yeah.
Do you feel like that gave him a little bit more drive, like he wanted to honor his brother and push forward and go through all this pain and become the best athlete he could?
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind, you know, because
Hmm.
you, I don't know that they consciously competed, right? But well, you know, I don't know if I'm an only child. Are you? You
No,
have brothers?
I've got brothers.
Oh well, then I don't have to. I don't have to explain it to you. You can explain it to me, right?
Hmm.
It's there's always that competition, right? Well, if you can jump an inch, I can jump two, and if I jump two, you're going to try to jump three, and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
but yeah, I think Charlie realized he was carrying the banner for both of them, and I think that made him work that much harder, honestly.
I was younger when all this happened, so I never knew when, Charlie was on SmackDown back then. He always had Russ on his tape, and I never knew because the internet really wasn't privy to a lot back then. So you never knew. And then as, a couple years later came on, it was his brother, and they look so much alike. And I feel like Russ was a little bit bigger than Charlie, though.
You know what? Don't ask me to give you an opinion because right now I'm trying in my mind to see the two of them stand. There could I don't guess there could be maybe 10 pounds, 15 pounds difference in the two of them. Maybe but yeah, they were most definitely Haas brothers. I mean, there was no doubt that they belonged in the same clan. Yeah.
And I think the original plan was for them to be with Kurt Angle, if I'm correct, and not Shelton Benjamin at the time, or maybe all three of them.
Well, and I can't say that for sure either. Now Sheldon, was a student coach at
Hmm.
Minnesota. That's how he and Brock Lesnar hooked up.
Hmm.
And so I don't know if that was actually, Stanford never called me to ask my opinion, quite frankly.
That was a common theme. Even with Dr. Tom, he always said that there'd be a knock at the door, and he didn't even know who was signed, who was coming in, or there was no. He had to say, "Give me a minute. Let me make a phone call, see if this person was supposed to be here today."
Right. Well, there was a misconnect between Stanford and Louisville and Cincinnati at times.
Hmm.
You may not remember this, but it was well documented because Corny documented it. But Corny had these two guys working as a heel team together, right?
Hmm.
And they had this hot angle going with another team in OVW, and they brought they brought his heel team up and turned them into baby faces. Of, I forget whether it was on Raw or SmackDown, but one of the main rosters. And Jimmy Loss is cool, but yeah, you just never knew because and of course we sent them art. They got a copy of our TV every week. They got a copy of OVW, so it wasn't that they didn't know so and so is a babyface or so and so is a heel on our
Hmm.
shows. But again, it goes back. You and I had this conversation early on in our conversations about how subjective this industry is, right?
Hmm.
You and I can both watch a wrestler and have two different opinions on what we think he should be or what characterization. You'll see one thing and I'll see another.
Hmm. So how was it putting together HWA TV? You had so much talent. What was it like a day in putting together the weekly show? Because you were also traveling down to Louisville or Southern Indiana at that time, right, to film?
Yeah, that's where we were doing the shows on Sunday. Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, and then they actually, Louisville made it like a Sunday matinee, right?
Hmm.
And it was a good setup. Danny and Jimmy had a great TV set up there. Well, you probably see some of the stuff that's still right popping
Mm-hmm.
up from OVW. So yeah, my crew, we just we're just like we live maybe 125 miles, 100 to 125 miles since between Cincinnati and Louisville, and it was all down 75 to 71, and then over, and so yeah, it was. It was a good to get in front of a crowd,
Mm-hmm.
but also to be on the TV, so you know to work the cameras and et cetera, et cetera. So it worked out well for us and well for OVWs as well.
Now, would you just bring the select talents that were going to be filming that day, or would everyone just kind of load up and come down for a TV day?
No, I just the guys that had to be on the show because Sunday is Sunday, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not working, hey, you got to come and watch wrestling. Wait a damn minute. I was with you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And
Mm-hmm.
so no, if you weren't on the TV, you weren't forced. There was no reason you had to go at all.
I will say for the HWA TV that I have seen, you were big on interviewing the talents, introducing the talents, getting the talents out there. And I don't think any other developmental at the time was as focused as what you were, because you would introduce them, you would talk to them, you would want the audience to know just who this person was. And I always thought that was pretty cool for you to do, to take that time out to really get these names and these talents out there. You took the time out.
Well, for you young whippersnappers, that is something that I began doing right here in Knoxville, Tennessee in 1975.
Hmm.
With a, when I'll tell you a little bit of the background and why I got into that particular part of it. Okay, so I got involved in television, as you know, in Canada in 1970 for my first time, and then of course in Charlotte, Atlanta, and so forth, so on. But when Ron Fuller bought the Knoxville territory in 1974, he said, "I want you to come in and build me a TV. You've been working in that end of it, and now you've got carte blanche within reason. Don't get crazy on me, right?" And so anyway, this had been kicked. This deal about what a segment I called personality profile,
Hmm.
and it just been running around through my thick skull for gosh, I don't know, several years at this point, because during during the time when I was involved in public relations and magazines and all that stuff, right? So
Hmm.
I'm looking at other facets of different industries, what might parallel and work with us, right?
Hmm.
Well, if you stop and look at NASCAR, uh, if let's say you're a NASCAR fan, and if your favorite driver drives Chevrolet, it's a good chance you drive a Chevrolet as well, right?
Hmm.
Or a Ford, it's a Ford, right? Okay. Now, I'm an Ohio State Buckeye fan. I'm, not an alumni. I wish I could tell you that I were, but I'm not. So, I'm not a big fan of the Houston Texans currently. But guess what? Their quarterback just played at Ohio State 3 years ago, right? So
Hmm.
I'm curious as to what they're doing, and I do pay attention, right?
Hmm.
So my thought is, okay, all we're selling a a limited personality in a particular wrestler because you see him as a bad guy or as a good guy. You see him in the ring doing his thing. He's got another life. He's
Hmm.
got hobbies. He's got a family. He likes a certain food, that sort of thing. So, and this is going to take a while for me to spit all this out to you. As I moved around and got involved with television in other territories, I noticed some things. When I first went into Atlanta in 1966, Leo Garibaldi asked me, he says, that drag racing thing in your promo stuff, is that a work or is that a shoot? I said, no. I was driving on a drag strip before I had a license to drive on the street, right? You know
Hmm.
anything about Georgia drag racing? Yes, I do, because I followed the National Hot Rod Association and raced at their tracks. So I knew about Pete Robinson and you know this guy, several, and I knew names of the tracks. So the first day I was at TV, he said, I'm going to have Ed Capel was their TV guy at the time. He said, I'm going to have Ed talk to you and I'm going to have him bring up drag racing since you're not in any angles or any storylines. And so we can, and you can plug that a little bit and talk about Georgia and the different tracks and the drivers and stuff. So we did that. So the following Monday night at the show, I had a lady come up and said, if you're going to, after my match, I'd come back outside to watch. If you're going to be here a few minutes, my grandson would like to meet you. And I said, sure. So she went and got her grandson, came back, and he handed me his programmed autograph. And I said, you come to the shows here on Monday night with your grandmother all the time. And before he could open his mouth, she said, he's never been here on Monday night. He watches with me every Saturday night, at 6:05, but he's never been here until you showed up because you talked about hot rods on the show last Saturday, and he's crazy about hot rods. So this light bulb went off over my head, right? I sold a wrestling ticket, not because of what I do in a wrestling ring, but because we share a hobby, right? All right. Now, moving forward a few years, I forget what year it was, but, back when the NFL first came on, they put college bands, marching bands, and all kinds of crazy things on at halftime. This must have been, I don't know, in early 70s, I guess, maybe 70, 71, when they were doing like similar profile on different athletes. And like they'd have this crazy, wild defensive lineman who wanted to rip guys' heads off, right? And showing his hobby, he made pottery, right? This violent, crazy man makes pottery, right? But the yin and yang, and I thought, wow, I like the comparison. So all this led up to when Ron Fuller asked me to build a TV show, and I had carte blanche to do that. I'm going to take 5 minutes in the middle of that show, and I'm going to build a personality profile. It's going to be a sit-down, pre-taped segment, right? Now, and of course, talking to older wrestlers and this and that, you're trying to get feedback because we're getting ready to start the territory here start our TVs here in November of 1974. And a lot of the old, you can't do that. I said, what do you mean I can't? What? Oh, no, you'll kill your heat. Now realize that with the exception of Georgia back then, all wrestling shows were 1 hour, right? 1 hour long. And the veterans' idea was that if you stop and do a low-key pre-tape 5 minutes, you're going to kill all the heat you build up in the first part of the show, and you'll have to start all over again once that 5-minute segment is over. Well, that wasn't the case. It was not the case. And so, I'll give you a quick example. Bob Armstrong and I, when we traveled together back then, both of us are old enough to be into doo-wop music. Do you know what doo-wop music is, young man?
Yes.
Okay. Well, and we used to kill time on the road. I said, I'd give him the name of a song. He'd give me the name of the group that did it, right? Then he'd give me a song, and I'd have to come back and forth. And then whichever one of us got knocked out, the other guy was the winner. So I was doing a profile here on TV that's to put in the show that Saturday. And toward the end of the 5 minutes, I said, remember the game we played on the road, right? About with the doo-wop groups. Yeah. You mean when I beat you all the time? And no, you didn't beat me. Now this wasn't planned out. This is all, off top of our heads. So that was the way we wrapped that segment up. So the next Friday night in Knoxville, this lady comes up to me and she said, Mr. Thatcher, my name is, God, don't ask me because that's been too many years ago. We started it here at Channel 10 in 1975. So anyway, she said, my name is such, and I'm secretary to Professor so-and-so, who is with I forget the history department, math at the University of Tennessee. He's also a big fan of the old doo-wop music. He wondered if it was just part of the show that you guys talk like that, or are you really into it? I said, no, we both are old enough we grew up with that. We're both old enough to remember when there was no rock and roll, right? And so she handed me type two pages typed up, two sets of that, and two self-addressed stamped envelopes, one for me and one for Bob. This professor wanted to see just how good we were at doo-wop history, right? So it works, and and of course that was a part of the show as long as I produced it here, you know. And but that's where the idea for hanging with, hey, I'm hanging with the Island Boys, right? To because again, well today, unless did you see the Roderick Strong 2-part segment on NXT a couple of years ago? Where he was playing wrestler in his backyard. His dad, they built the ring and everything. Yeah. It was a great. Both segments were great, and as I recall, the company even made comment about the great, not positive, feedback they got from that. I'm surprised they. I know heels aren't heels, and baby faces can be bad guys, and all that. And that opens the door for a lot more because when we were doing the personality profiles then, the heels couldn't tell you how much they loved children or, they loved puppies, right? They had to want to bite somebody's head off. But we were low key. I'll try to find a segment from the old Southeastern Championship Wrestling segments here in Knoxville from the 70s, and we'll play it if I can find one. But but see, the other part of it too was back then, if I said tonight in Knoxville, the clock started running a commercial, and you only had so many minutes of commercial time in that hour, right? So with the personality profile, I could say, well, Ryan, you and I are locking up in a Texas death match. As long as I didn't mention the town, we could argue about it, talk about it, throw punches about it, but we couldn't mention the town, right? So realize this tape was being bicycled. It aired here on Saturday. It aired in Johnson, the Tri-Cities a week later. Then I went to Corbin, Kentucky. So each one of these cities is looking at it, and if let's say you and I are doing Texas death matches, well, we're going to follow it from Knoxville to Johnson City, then we're going to Corbin with it, right? The good old days. So that's the way it worked out.